unmasked candidates. Is the biggest challenge today that we all face. When people come in front of you looking for a role, looking for an assignment in your organization, we always have a challenge. We have a challenge in terms of how do I know what is there in the candidate's mind? Is he or she the right fit? And that's exactly where entire research of behavioral sciences, the science of psychology has gone in, and we will cover, do justice to this webinar, do justice to your presence today, right, to the fullest extent possible. Unmasked candidates is all about BAT, right? Three things we're talking about: B for behavior, understand behaviors. We are talking about A for attitudes, uncover attitudes. And of course, we look at unmasked thinking, right? Getting to somebody's mind and see what are they thinking? What is their thinking likely to be? And that's precisely where this entire dimension is. Incidentally, we have just published a book called Unmasking Candidates, available. It's published by the Notion Press. This is the third book published by us, and also available on Amazon and Flipkart and other online platforms, right? So let's look at what we can do, how we learn and practice this process of BAT, interview psychology. It is actually BAT, B-A-T, what I said just now: behavior, attitude, and thinking, internal view. Interview is all about internal view. You want to understand what is this particular dimension. So in fact, for time long, it's a cliche in the human resource world: right person for the right job. We all agree with that. No disputes at all on the sentence. But it's a challenge. How do you get the right person for the right job? Quite often we get the right person, but he or she is in the wrong job, or we have the wrong person in the right job. In either case, the organization becomes the victim, the project becomes the victim, right? And that's where organizations don't move ahead. So unmasked candidates is of paramount importance for us to understand this dynamic. So when you look at that, today, unmasking candidates, behavior, attitudes, and thinking through an internal view process. So you see a big heart there, a wonderful, beautiful heart there, which is an acronym. The heart actually stands for Holistic Evaluation Approaches to Recruitment, to Training, and Selection. One is you are recruiting somebody fresh into your organization, right, at different levels, right? So recruiting strategies, getting the right person into your organization. Second one is you already have people, right? How do you train them? How do you develop them? How do you nurture them so that you're able to optimize their performance? HRO, human resource optimization, is what we are talking about. And of course, you have important projects coming up. You have important assignments coming up. You have huge customer demands to live up to. So then how do you select the right person to handle key roles across the organization? So that is why the heart is all about holistic evaluation approaches to recruitment, training, and selection. So how to recruit the right and retain your people better is what we are going to be into. Yeah. So today, unbiased, the most important, unbiased is the key word. Objective ways of interviewing are now preferred over biased, subjective, traditional methods. So that means the traditional ways of interviewing, where it was an opinion of the interviewer as to what he or she feels about the candidate, was paramount. And there are huge challenges, right? You don't hire somebody because you like somebody's face. You don't hire somebody because the person can talk his way through the interview, right? You're very impressed. But the question is he or is she, can they perform later on the job, right? In the key role that you are hiring them for. So that is why today we look at competency-based behavioral event interviewing with a holistic approach of using multiple psychometric analysis. and that removes the risk of interviewer's bias and makes the hiring process smarter. So there are quite a few things. Number one, the interviewing unbiased today, objective methods are competency based. That means we are looking at mapping the competency. We will come into that directly later. And we are looking at behavioral event interviewing. So that means a lot of events have taken place in the candidate's career or in one's life. And then you want to understand the event, and through the event, you want to understand, probe it, and then understand the mind. And not enough, competency alone, not enough, behavioral event interviewing alone, not enough, right? But along with that, you have psychometric analysis, not just one psychometric analysis, but a multiple psychometric analysis. Thereby, you are eliminating the bias and making the hiring process smarter. So the chances of you succeeding very, very high. So unmasking candidates will draw out the information necessary to establish whether a candidate will be likely to fulfill the strategic needs of the job. Look at that. Look at the word. Fill the strategic need. Every organization has a strategic need. It doesn't matter what role. It doesn't matter whether the role of a receptionist or the role of a CEO. Every role has a purpose. There is a strategic need as to why you're hiring somebody, why you're investing in the human asset, and how to get the best out of that human asset in which you are investing. So recruitment can no longer be taken for granted. Recruitment or hiring people in your organization can no longer, okay, have one more person. No, it is not that anybody can interview. You need somebody who is really skilled in all the three things that I mentioned: competency, the behavioral element interviewing, and multiple psychometric analysis. When all the three combine, yes, the chances of your fulfilling the strategic need of the organization becomes very, very apparent. Yeah. So let's look at this. Internal view. Interview, internal view helps unmask three things: behavior, attitude, and thinking. It is human nature, my dear friends, to wear a mask, to help form favorable impressions. And people, I tell you, are great actors. People tell you what you like to hear, especially during interviews. That's why you need to rely on measurable tools from the world of behavioral sciences to get an internal view. That becomes very critical for us. What does a candidate want to do? He likes to tell you what you like to hear. He knows his objective is very clear: to get through, to impress you. So he's going to answer you. And mind you, the candidate is well prepared to take you on, right? And that's the situation. Look at a small child, right, growing up, right? The mummy wants to test, right, whether what does the small the child says, baby, you like mummy more or daddy more? What does a baby say to the mummy? Mummy, right? And now she goes and tells, look, this is what the baby said, and then she likes me more than you. Says, okay, fine, let me ask on my own. So now daddy goes to the baby and says, baby, you like mommy or daddy? The baby says, daddy. Now what happens? Both the parents come together, right? And then they ask the question. And the baby again answers brilliantly, yes, mommy and daddy, I like both of you. So who is masking? Baby is masking. So that means the masking of human behavior actually needs no training, right? So they do that all the time, right from the childhood onwards. Now that is one example. Let me give you the second example. You have the wonderful story of the boyfriend and the girlfriend. What is the boy trying to tell the girl? He's so much in love with her, he likes her, and then he wants to get married to her. So what will happen? He creates a favorable impression, right? And then tells her that you are the best woman, I am the best man for you. And then he is masking his behavior through the entire courtship period. The courtship period can be 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year. Yes, they can have differences, they can have small fights, but in the end, the intention is to woo the other person into a marriage. She does it, he does it. And now, after some time, after those 2, 3 years of for courtship has gone through, now they get married. And as the honeymoon phase kind of wears out, one day there is a big argument between the two. So other person says, I never thought you are like this. So what's the reply, the response? Yes, you should have known me. You're right. For more than 3 or 4 years, we have been together. And that's where the whole issue is. So that means for years, my dear friends, for years, people can mask their behavior. So now you understand why it becomes so important. It becomes so important for us to unmask candidates because you're interviewing them for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 1 hour. And in that 30, 40 minutes, we have to use the best of behavioral sciences to make sure that we understand what is in the candidate's mind. If a girlfriend or a boyfriend can mask for years, if a baby can mask right at the very beginning of one's life, you know that human nature wears a mask and to form favorable impressions. And mind you, people are great actors. And that's where this becomes very important for us to go forward. Unmasking behavior, attitude, and thinking of the candidate's inner mind. You're going into the inner mind, you're going to the hidden mind, is a process. It is based on the premise that the most accurate predictor of future performance is the thinking of the candidate during a past performance in a similar situation. So when we, in a behavioral event interviewing, when we want to probe about a past performance, it is not only about behavior, it is about what made that behavior happen, which is all about thinking. That is where the B, A, and the T, behavior, attitude, thinking, right? In a similar situation, what has happened? And internal view focuses on examples of past behaviors, attitudes, and thinking that can be used to predict future action. So if I hire this person, how he or she is likely to behave in the future, what kind of attitudes, right? And what kind of needs that is possible. Dear friends, it is a systematic process. The good news is it is a science, so you can 100% rely on this. And that is structured and goal-oriented. Yes, let's go in a little deeper. Now let's find out what happens. What is the difference between the best and the rest? If you look at it, there are many good professionals who know how to do their tasks, who know how to communicate with others very well, and of course, who know how to manage their people too. However, but when one needs to stand out from the rest and excel in their field, look what happens. Look what happens. Good is not good enough. That's where you start wondering what happened during the interview. You know this guy is good. Not only you, probably there was a panel of interviewers and all of us together thought that this guy or this lady is the best for this particular role. And after consultation, after all kinds of background verification, you hire this person only to realize that good is not good enough at all. And that's where it becomes very important for us going forward. So let's look at what does the research say. The research says that in this world, only 3% are top performers. And about 10%, mind you, about 10% are good performers. But what is staggering is 60% are average performers. And shocking, 27% are poor performers. Look at it. That means 3 plus 10 is only 13% who form what you call it as the minority of the entire working population in any organization who really put in the best. And so that means it's a minority who performs. You look at that, any organization, it's only a few people who are really leading the pack, whether be it an organization, a multinational company, be it a small business or be it, what do you call it, a Rotary Club, a Lions Club, a social organization. Look at any one of them. There are only 3 or 10%, the minority who sweats it out, who actually the brain behind. They strategize, they plan events, and they do the works. But there are average performers, 60%, who do their job, whatever is given to them, probably to the best of their ability. And 27% are actually poor performers. This is so true even of a classroom of 100 students. You see only 3% getting the top ranks, about 10% are good performers in any classroom, and about 60% are average performers, and 27% fail at least one subject, and invariably some of them are ending up dropping out. So then we need to understand, when we are hiring, what are these minority that we are hiring? So because today as a candidate, out of 100 candidates who come, mind you, 60% are average performers who are likely to come in front of you when you're hiring. So how do you unmask them? And about 27% are likely to be poor performers. How are you going to unmask them? That becomes a challenge. So let's understand the minority mindset first before we go further. So look at the minority, think and feel different. The way they think about issues, situations, challenges, ambiguities are very, very different. And the way they feel, the way they express, the way they empathize are different. And they do ordinary things, but are willing to do the little bit extra. They are willing to go that extra mile. And that's where the entire success really happens for these top and the good performers. They have this beautiful IQ is your left brain orientation, the intelligent quotient, and they also have the EQ, the emotional quotient. IQ is the left brain, right? Logical intelligence and language intelligence comes from here. And then you have the right brain intelligence, the emotional quotient, the visual intelligence, the interpersonal intelligence, the intrapersonal intelligence, the natural intelligence, the intuitive intelligence, the visual intelligence, the musical intelligence, the spiritual intelligence. All these come from the right brain. Huge. And that is where the whole dimension is. When you combine the IQ plus the EQ, you get an equation called SQ, 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 SQ. What is this SQ? SQ is nothing but the success quotient. The minority believes in achieving success, achieving milestones, turning defeats into a success, right? Looking at opportunities in the middle of all challenges. What happens? They take those SQ steps, success quotient. They want to succeed every day, small things, bit by bit, step by step. Then ultimately, the highest form of success, that's where the capital S, capital Q, which incidentally is the success quotient, which incidentally is also the spiritual quotient, which is incidentally the purpose of all life. It doesn't matter what religion we all belong to, but the purpose of all religion is the SQ, the spiritual quotient, highest form of success. That is where the minority succeed and the majority struggle. And what happens? We do have the attitude. We are talking about the attitude. We said behavior, we said attitude. You look at the attitude. Do have. I want to be the best. I want to be the best in the job. I want to do and perform, contribute to the best of the organization, the project. Fantastic. To be that, what should I do? Right? I should do this, I should do this, I should do this. So they think up things and then they're ready to perform. And to do that, I need resources. I need to have that. I need to have this. I need to get that. So they talk to people, they demand of it, the resources, they argue, they convince people. Not easy in any organization. We all know that, right? We have people at various levels. They need to be convinced. So they prepare the argument, they put forward the case, they win it. They have this approach called a be, do, have, and they have self-awareness. They're clearly aware of their own strengths as well as their weaknesses. So their strengths is what they use, their weaknesses is what they, get others to complement who are good in that. Yeah, fantastic. Let's look at something else, the majority. Where does the 60% average and the poor performers, where do they have? They are ordinary performers. The IQ, EQ is not balanced. We have heard this in many companies, wherever we have done leadership interventions at all levels in some of the best of MNCs across the world, people have told, oh, these our people are technically very good. But what is technically very good? I mean, they know the job, but they cannot get along with people. They are very angry. They are very upset. They're shouting. They're hooting. They don't know how to manage human resources. So people leave under such managers. So what is happening there? The no balance. Either they're very emotional, very connected, logic is missing, or they're very logical, the emotions are missing, so the balance is missing, and that's probably one of the reasons. They have hidden skills, mind you. They're talented, but do not use the talent. So now, and they have this attitude, have, do, be. I don't have it, so because of that, I cannot do it. So because of that, I will not be that. Have, do, be. That's where they give you excuses. They give you justifications as to why they will not be able to perform something that you want them to perform. I'm sure you're all senior professionals. You've seen people who have told you, sorry, sir, I don't have it. I cannot speak English like you. I'm not as qualified as you are. I don't know this subject. I've never done it like this. So they're only giving you excuses as to why something is not possible. I don't have it. I don't have it. I don't have it. Because I don't have it, I cannot do it. Because I cannot do it, I will never be able to be what you are or what you expect me to do. And of course, they do not have the self-awareness. So now my challenge is, if majority of the candidates are coming in front of me are average and poor performers, how do I select the best candidate? So that is why when we spoke about interviewing, it is an internal viewing, which is what really, really matters. But talking about opportunities in any organization, opportunities in the world, even amongst the COVID times, even amongst the tough times, plenty. So what do the top performers and the good performers do? They create opportunities. They grab opportunities. They don't let go. But what happens to the majority, average performers? They're waiting, or they are losing opportunity. They're struggling. So now you clearly know why is it important as people who are recruiting or who are selecting people. We cannot select anybody. It is not about replacing one head with another head. It is about the right person for the right job. If we need to hire top and good performers, see, the focus is on performance, right? How do we get that? And that is why unmasking candidates is of immense value for you and me to go forward and then use the best of psychology, the best of behavioral sciences to hire the right person for the right job. Wonderful. You have something which is very important called gauge the candidate's willingness to perform. So in any recruitment, we are looking at a candidate from 4 dynamics. One is performance, second one is potential. On the other side, we are looking at the ability of the candidate and the willingness that he puts in at the workplace so that the results are obvious. Let's look at each of these windows. Look at performance. What can I do? Performance and ability, right? I have the knowledge, I have the education, I have the skill sets developed, I have the experience, and I have a degree of proficiency in that given job. What can I do? So now as interviewers, when we ask these questions, what can I do? Candidate is easily able to mask it and is easily able to share as to what he or she can do. Let's look at the second, ability and the potential. Now imagine that you're hiring a fresher. He only has a theoretical knowledge from the college or the university that he has passed out at age of 23, 24, 25. You and me know that their experience in an organization, the practical aspects of how you implement are very, very minimal. But what are you looking at? Learning capacity. You're looking at aptitude for the job. You're looking at intelligence. You're looking at ambiguity management. So when I moved from pharmaceutical to a hotel industry, what do I know about the hotel industry? Nothing at all. So then what was the hotel industry people who recruited me were looking at? I have absolutely no technical knowledge about the hotel industry from a professional point of view. So what are they looking at? They are looking at, hey, his knowledge in marketing, his knowledge in product management, how will that apply in the hotel scenario? Does he have the does he have the aptitude? Does he have the intelligence to convert? Can he manage ambiguous situation? If I am able to satisfy them, they are ready to hire me. And incidentally, I got hired. Okay. Now, the third one, potential and willingness. So we ask people, hey, what do you want to do 5 years from now? What do you want to do 10 years from now? What I want to do, my career goal, interests, my motives as to why I'm applying for this job, very easily candidate can mask. So that means out of the 4 windows, my dear friends, out of these 4 windows, ability and performance window, any candidate can mask it. You and me are experts in that. Potential and ability, the second window, also can be masked. I can always tell you that I have a learning capacity, I have an aptitude, I have a willingness, I will work hard, I will do this, I will do this. And the third, what I want to do, right, in terms of my career, my progress, right, into the future, interests, motives also. But where most of the bulk of the interviews, actually fail to tap in is the willingness and the performance window. That is where the average performers and the poor performers actually sneak into the organizations, because they can always fool people, right? We all get carried away. We hire emotionally, not always logically. And that's where the challenge is. So what is this? What am I willing to do? So when you look at the willingness and performance window, you're looking at attitude, which is influenced by heredity and environmental. That means heredity means coming from birth almost, which is influenced by belief systems that he or she holds in one's mind deep inside. It is influenced, the willingness and the performance is influenced by the values and the principles that a person carries in one's mind. And the personality types, the personality trails, the personality traits, all these are embedded inside one's mind. So if you don't have a scientific methodology to probe into the willingness and the performance, it is impossible to unmask candidates, right? And that's where organizations struggle today. So that's where it is very revealing to understand the signs to unmask candidates' inner mind, to find the right kind and avoid hiring in a blind. Have you experienced these things earlier? After a great interview, there is inadequate information gathered about the candidate. You finish a great interview, but then when you sit back and then check, and then you realize, hey, so many things. Oh, I should have asked him. Oh, this one I don't know, right? Assumptions about the candidates that leads to either hiring. Sometimes we hire a right person or a wrong, or sometimes we don't take a hiring decision at all. We postpone. Frustration with this time-consuming process, because it takes sometimes months, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, probably more than that, and not enough questions to ask. Sometimes candidate is there, the interviewer has no questions to ask, or that's why sometimes when I have a panel, you have any question, nobody has questions to ask. So that means unable to decide whom to offer the job between 2 candidates. Of course, we had this wonderful experience. We had the British Embassy in New Delhi, right, approached us. They said they wanted to hire, at that point of time, they wanted to hire head of finance for the British Embassy in Delhi. And they have shortlisted, they have interviewed a lot of chartered accountants, and they shortlisted 6 chartered accountants in the final. So, but there's only 1 vacancy. The question is, whom are you going to offer this job? So all of them, when they sent their resumes, we looked at the job description, we looked at individual resumes of each of the candidates. Honestly, nothing to choose between the 6 of them. Why? Because all of them have qualified chartered accountants. They're done well. And each one of them have anywhere between 10 to 12 years of work experience. They're all professionals. And each one of them have worked in 2, 3, or 4 organizations, the best of names. So now you tell me, chartered accountant, best of jobs, best of companies they have worked, and you have one vacancy. All six are equally good candidate. They have impressed you. That's why they shortlisted. So British Embassy said, hey, can you help us? We are not able to make up. Why? Because it is extremely difficult to read the inner mind. They've read through the qualification, they've seen the certificates, they've seen the experience, but that's not enough. And that is where the whole challenge comes. Candidates prepare to take you on. Applicants are extremely well prepared and expectant. Hence, what they can do, they can selectively respond with information, perhaps not be entirely honest with their responses, and lead the interviewer to believe that their stated behaviors are the ones likely to be witnessed in the future, including in the STAR approach. Correct? When you talk about the situation or task, right, it is easier because they know what actions and then they know what are the results. They're all trained very well. They can always tell you what is what. Absolutely. Yeah. And look at that. That's why these rat in the maze employees, we're talking about the average and the poor performers, may put in effort, hardworking, but with increasing resentment, complaints, and passive resistance to the mounting pressure for ever higher goals. They see these goals as forced choices, unrelated to their underlying dreams for which they have joined this organization, wishes or personal aspirations. So, which means, in short, a rat in the maze employee is actually a liability for your department, for your team, or for your organization. So, as an interviewer, what can you do about it? Right? So that we don't hire a rat in the maze employee. And that's where the science is very clear. We're going forward. Then, what is the best way to match the right person for the right job? So the question is how? So how to recruit and retain a human asset and not end up with a long-term liability in the organizations, right? A lot of people, right, become a liability in the organization. Neither they can leave because nobody, they will never find a job outside, nor will the organization, because of human dimensions, they will continue to retain, but then suffer the consequences of non-performance. So then the question is, the big question, all of us, all the organizations are facing today, how? What do we do? Incidentally, long back, there was a survey done around the world by Gallup. They asked a very simple question in this survey. Which do you think will help you improve the most? Knowing your strengths or knowing your weaknesses? And look at the graph. The countries chosen at that point of time into this survey was US, UK, Canada, France, Japan, and China. And you looked at 41% in US said strengths, 38% in UK, 38% Canada, France 29, Japan 24, and China 24. You can imagine, right? That means the majority, right, focus on the weaknesses of the candidate. We are probing the candidate's mind to find out what is he not good at, right? The focus is on the strengths is only far lesser than the focus on the weaknesses. So then the same question was posed after the survey was posed to the world's best performing managers. They saw this guy is doing very well. He's a very good manager in so-and-so company. Let's ask him, what do you do? Right? And the answer was, number one, we focus on each employee's strengths and manage around his or her weakness. Fantastic. That is why they are the top performing bosses. They're not so much bothered about the weakness of a candidate or an employee's weakness. They say, okay, this guy is not good in this. Let's not waste time trying to improve him there, but let's use where is he good at? What is his strength? Let's tap into that. Wherever he needs the support, there we will give him the support from with the help of other employees in the organization. Fantastic. So then what is happening is people complement and support each other for their strengths and avoid conflicting on weaknesses. So this has a huge dynamic impact on an organization or within the team, because they're not busy fault finding with each other. They are busy looking at complementing each other's strengths. Thereby, you have created a very appreciative environment in the team or the organization, and you have created a performance-based culture. Correct? So strategic optimization of people's strengths will bring in greater teamwork and a higher productivity, because the whole focus is strength-based, which is what the science of psychology is telling us all the time, not on weakness-based at all. But then as parents, we train our children, oh, you're weak in maths, take tuition in maths. Right from childhood, our focus is always on weakness. You're not good in this, okay, improve in this. We are not looking at, hey, you're good in this, improve on that, right? That's the whole focus. But look at all the great sportsmen, all the great musicians, look at all the great personalities, scientists, politicians, whoever. They all focus on their strengths. You mean to say that they don't have weaknesses? They have, but the focus was on the strengths. So now when you want to hire the best of candidates, you are looking at somebody who is, what is his strength, right? And that's where the focus should be. Many organizations today, unfortunately, are built around exactly the opposite answer. Maintain each employee's strengths, work on fixing his or her weaknesses, right? Whether you're doing a competency-based interview, right? It's a perceptions matter. Perception of the interviewers can be wrong. That is why they say maintain each employee's strengths, work on fixing a her weakness is a strict no, right? Or it's a behavioral event. It's again a perception that plays in. So now that's where let's understand the science, so that we can go a little more deeper. How does your attitude impact your behavior? If you notice, it is like a huge iceberg phenomena. Observable behavior outside. But if you look at the iceberg, what is hidden is attitude, ways of thinking of the candidate, or the behavior needed to fulfill responsibility is completely hidden. You need scientific methodology, right, to dig deeper into understanding attitude. So this is where very comfortably people actually don't even probe into it. That is where we spoke about the willingness and the performance, that particular window of beliefs, attitude, values, personality, all that is completely ignored. Second, you talked about aptitude, natural ability that prepares a person to fulfill responsibility. This was the question that Sumit was asking. Areas of improvement. Look at the word natural ability. If there is a natural ability, if the person is not developed the natural ability, yes, is it trainable? Is that can that aspect be improved? 100% possible, right? And one can definitely do it. Otherwise, no. That is why you need to understand the inner mind of the candidate. The third is a skill, right? Acquired ability or experience needed to fulfill the responsibility. I may have the natural ability, but I may not have acquired the ability. Like I gave you the example of swimming or probably singing. I have the talent, but I never went to a music class. So that is why I'm not able to sing. So it's an acquired ability. And then, of course, the knowledge is what you're talking about, information and understanding that is needed to fulfill responsibility. If you notice, all these four are below the waterline. It is not observable. So that is why when you unmask a candidate, you are actually digging deeper. Yes, it is easier to dig the knowledge part of it, right? You ask questions, right? What can you do, right? Or what you are, do you have the ability, if you're trainable, possible, right? You can also dig the skill or the aptitude, but the attitude seems to be the hidden block that actually challenges. So that's why when we say behavioral event interviewing, behavior is an observable phenomena. You can see it, but what goes inside is the knowledge, the skill, the aptitude, and the attitude. And that's where the whole challenge is of how do we unmask a candidate's inner mind to find the right kind and avoid hiring in a blind. So let's go back and look at very quickly Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham, the Johari window. So they said there are 4 windows. All of you are familiar with this. Open window is known to self, known to others, right? And the hidden window is known to self, but not known to others. The candidate is not revealing oneself. Then you have the blind spot or the blind window, which is known to others, but the candidate does not know himself. And of course, there is the unknown window, right, which is not known to either. We can't make out in a candidate, neither the candidate himself knows about oneself. So when you look at this, the Johari window model was developed by American psychologists Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham in the 1950s while researching group dynamics. Today, The Johari window model is especially relevant due to modern emphasis on behavior, attitude, empathy, cooperation, intergroup development, as well as interpersonal development. These qualities in people we recruit or promote makes a vital difference to the organizational growth and development. And that's why it becomes very important for us to look at it. So now let's apply this. The Johari window model is also referred to as a disclosure feedback model of self-awareness, and by some people as an information processing tool. So when you look at that dimension, the Johari window actually represents information. How does a candidate feel? What is his experience? What are his views, attitudes, skills, intentions? Look, intention is in the mind, deep inside, motivation, etc. Right? Within or about a person in relation to their people, in relation to the four perspectives which are described as we go along now. So now you look at that, the Johari window, we spoke about it. No candidate, known to interviewer. Unknown to candidate, known to the interviewer. Known to the candidate, unknown to the interviewer, and unknown to both the people. So now this one, you know, is a sports person, has 2 years experience, knows 3 languages, right? Known to self as well as known to others. Then you have the unknown to self, my body posture, incorrect grammar, talking loudly, talking too softly. Yes, unknown to self, but known to the interviewer or known to others. Whereas you look at this, unknown to others, but known to self, family relations, on-time person, frequent liar, these things you don't know really, right? So, and of course, unknown to self, fear of death, hidden talent, repressed or subconscious thoughts, etc., etc., etc. Now, the beauty is when you apply Johari window to get to know the candidate deeper and better, minus the masking, our job in an internal view is to open the window, make the open window bigger and bigger. So by asking feedback solicitation or by self-disclosure, exposure, probing, etc., you're able to minimize the blind area or the hidden area, thereby the open area becomes larger, right? But still the unknown area still remains. And unfortunately, when we talk about average performers and poor performers, which forms almost 87% of the candidates who come in front of you, open is very small. That is why in an interview, if you are not using all the scientific methodology, it is difficult to probe. However good you may be as a prober, right? It is difficult to probe because it is difficult to read inner mind. So that is where the science of behavioral sciences or psychology comes in reality. So the key lies in objectively unmasking the glue-like mindsets, the die-hard habits, and the concrete wall-like attitudes behind every behavior displayed by the individual during the interview, and mapping the same in line with the required competency and the job role. So now let's go into adopt the BAT route for recruiting. Right now, when we say BAT route, we are talking about B, A, and T, right? So behavior, B for behavior, A for attitude, T for thinking. So this is the 3 aspects that we are looking at. When you look at BAT, behavior is caught in the environment one lives, right? And the attitude is inherited and developed over the years by the surroundings. And that's where, so that means if behavior is difficult to change after you hire, even more difficult is attitude. So then what happens? The only savior for growth and progress happens to be the thought process, the thinking. So when you look at unmask the hidden elements, you are looking at the BAT kind of a dimension. That's precisely what we are actually going into. Now let's look at behavior versus outcomes. By probing and asking the right behavioral event questions, you are better able to understand the candidate and predict how they will behave in the future. Because today you are hiring, but a candidate may continue with you for the next 1 year, 2 year, 10 years, 15 years, we don't know how long, into the future. So that is why they say you don't hire a candidate for today's job, you actually hire them for their future growth as well. So now, what are you looking at? Behavior is what one actually does. So that means behavior is something that can be read, that can be observable, can be seen, right? Number two, outcomes are the result of that behavior during an event. Something happened during that event. This was the behavior, good, bad, and the ugly, and what are the outcomes, and that can be measured, that can be seen. And number three, environment is where that behavior took place and what might have affected its outcomes. So that sometimes we say the environment. So it is the home environment, it is the office environment, it is the leadership environment, it is the organizational environment, it is the economic environment in the country. All these also make an impact on the performance of the people. And fourth, situations or events are where the behavioral patterns get actually repeated again and again. And then finally, you have situations where communication patterns too are deep rooted. So in different situations, the way I talk to my boss, when he tells me something that I don't like, is very different. After half an hour or 1 hour later, when I go back to my team, if my team member, my junior, where the power equations have changed, now I am the boss, he tells me the same thing what my boss told me, the way I behave is different. That means within a space of half an hour or 1 hour, the behavior can change because of the situational difference, right? Behavior can shift there also. Even there, over a period of time, it becomes a pattern, and then that is where you can actually look into. So now with all this, how do you select a right person for the right job? So to understand that, human behavior evolves over a period of time from birth through a combination of heredity and environmental influences. Our life experiences, our knowledge, skill, attitude, and education helps us develop a core competency. Attitudes are again a result of habits and mindsets. And so it is important to measure the impact of such influences on the individual to get to hire the right person for the right job. So that means you're looking at a behavioral event interviewing not from a narrow focus, right? Only on the event, but you're looking at a whole lot of dimension about attitude, skill, mindset, knowledge, whole lot of dimension. So your BAT, the behavior thinking attitude, comes in. So you can now learn the art of conducting a competency-based behavioral event interviews the right way with a holistic psychometric driven screening approach to understand the candidate's cache. What are the cache? The knowledge, the attitude, the skill, and the habits. So now it is not enough that we know the cache, but we need to align the cache with the job requirements. Look at that amazing dimension. So now many people do interviews even without a job description. But let's assume today, as professionals, most of us have the job description ready. So we have to align the candidate's knowledge, attitude, skill, and habits to the job description that he has applied for. Not enough, because there is another time. What is the role expectation? Many organizations have even not specified what is the role expectation. What are you expected to do? Job description may be there, right? And the third, the performance outcome. So what performance outcome do we expect? And the fourth, what is the future growth? Why are you hiring this candidate today? Only for today's job? What kind of a future progress that he can achieve, right? Or how are you going to groom him tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And competency required for the job right throughout, and what the candidate brings in along with him or her. And then finally, does the profile of the candidate match the team profile? I may be good, I may be the right person, but I may have a tough time with my boss. Or probably the boss is good. I may have a tough time with some of my senior colleagues who are already entrenched in the organization. So that is where you talk about interpersonal rivalry, interdepartmental hatred, all these kind of dimensions. So that is why aligning cache to job requirements in terms of job description, role expectation, performance outcome, future growth, competency, team profile, and the team members' profiles becomes very, very critical. Then you are doing a full justice to the entire science of unmasking candidates, right? And so hiring right person for the right job becomes a lot more easier. So let's come into the most important dimension. Unmasking the candidate's mind through valuable psychometric tools to eliminate two things: subjective bias, number two, to gain the right perception. Because our understanding, it doesn't matter. See, today we have seen this. We have seen this happen in competency-based interviews. We have seen this happen even in behavioral event interviews, where without the psychometrics, different interviewers have different perceptions about the same candidate. Now then, what do you do? So then somewhere our competency-based interview or the behavioral event interviewing went wrong. Why? Because psychometric did not give you the inputs. So now let's look into that world of psychometric. Yeah. Time to unmask minds at interviews. Selecting people for technical skills or knowledge alone definitely does not guarantee success. So we need to go deeper. So use the latest cutting tools in behavioral sciences to get a thorough understanding of attitudes, right, thinking styles, competency, core competency, and personality patterns before you make the costly decision to hire. To enhance human optimization, save on valuable resources, and reduce attrition, you need to take the root cause, tackle the root cause, the attitude through the internal view. Look at the word human optimization. So it is not about human resource management. It is not about human resource development. It is not HRM or HRD. Today, when you are unmasking a candidate, what is important is how do you unmask the attitude so thereby you can optimize the human asset. Human resource optimization, HRO, becomes our focus. So can behaviors be transferred directly to real life? The big question. A lot of research done in this area. Research shows that it's more likely a person who answers the situational questions right will exhibit those behaviors later. However, on the job, the percentages still aren't high enough to make a solid hiring decision. And that's why psychometric analysis is of great use to capture the attitudes and thoughts and not just the behavior. So it is the attitude and the thoughts. So in a behavioral event interview, you're capturing behavior, but without attitude and the thoughts of the candidate. So that's where the vacuum is. So whole dimension of unmasking candidates is how do you unravel the vacuum? How do you go deeper? So let's look at what are psychometric tools. As the word itself goes, psyche means mind and the metric is measurement. So you look at the picture there, you have in the mind, there's a puzzle. In one of the puzzle is heredity nature, heredity which is coming from the nature. And other side, you have the environment, which is happening by nurture from the time we are born as baby 1 day old. So our parents, caregivers, elder brothers, sisters, that they start nurturing us. Later on, teachers, later on, the books, the articles that we read. All right, a lot of thoughts go in nurturing effect. Then, based on the kind of jobs that we are expected, roles we play in life, we develop and nurture competencies. Now, when I am coming in front of you as a candidate, I am a combination of heredity, environmental influences in my mind, and the competencies I have nurtured or not nurtured. Your job is to find out how do I, as a candidate, fit into the role that you are expecting me to do. So here, you need a holistic approach to psychometric assessment. Assessment needs because many different tools are required. One tool, again, a lot of people, they say, I'm using psychometric tool, but only one tool. Again, you'll only have a partial view of the mind, but never the complete view. That's why you need to look at the brain, what you have put briefly here, heredity, environment, and competency. Nature, nurture, role, very important. Only then it will fit into. So thus, these are objective and scientific tools to capture various attitudinal dimensions like personality styles, communication patterns, motivational levels, competency areas, interests, preferences, and a range of other important aspects that goes into making a good selection, right, into a right role. So using multiple psychometric assessments enables objective measurement of the candidate's inner mind. And then what we can do is linking hereditary types with environmental influences and inner motivations to performance competency helps unmask the BAT, behaviors, attitudes, and thinking. So how do we do that? Let's look at some samples. So you have the Carl Jung's research. Carl Jung says he researched heavily on the heredity influences on the people's mind. And when you look at a feeler candidate, look at under heredity, feeler candidates use emotions to think. They think using emotions only. So how does that link to upbringing influences, which what Marston did his research? Incidentally, a feeler candidate is likely to end up as more convincing personality, a consistent personality, harmony seeking, right? Peace loving, right? And expert abilities are likely to be nurtured, likely to be, right? Is to be underlined. Yeah. Environment, he or she is likely to be programmed to be people oriented, or they are responder. Whenever you tell them anything, they will do it. That means they may not be the initiators. And what kind of competencies they are likely to be good in? Oral communication should be good, sensitivity to people, their people's needs, relationship development, teamwork, right? Customer focus, motivating other people within the team or elsewhere, and developing people are a natural set of competencies which a feeler, candidate through upbringing of convincing and consisting, programmed to be people oriented and responder is likely to display. However, if you look at the heredity when it switches to intuitor candidate, uses the creative ideas to think, which is the other mind of the candidate. So normally the upbringing influences are likely to be convincing and controlling, abilities are likely to be nurtured, programmed to be initiator and task oriented. Competencies are flexibility, again oral communication, because intuitors are good in communication as well. They have an ability to take risk, to explore new ideas. They are more innovative. They take initiatives because there are a lot of ideas running in their mind, and the learning orientation is likely to be higher because they are always in search of new knowledge, new skills, right? And look at the thinker candidates, use logical analysis to think, and they are likely to be generally more conforming. That means follow the rules, regulations of what the bosses say, what the organization says. Abilities are likely to be nurtured, programmed to be responder. Don't expect any initiatives from them, and they are likely to be task oriented. Means whatever job is done, they will finish it, and not people oriented. So competencies are likely to be analytical thinking, planning, quality focus, business awareness, learning orientation, authority, and of course resilience. So now you look at the yet another category what Carl Jung found, right? Sensor candidates, or use actions to think. They are by doing, they are action oriented. They are more into experimentation mode. The upbringing is controlling abilities are likely to be nurtured. That means they're very dominant personalities, right? They are very authoritative, make their presence felt, right? Programmed to be initiator, task oriented, and competency is likely to be coming with them are initiative, risk taking, innovation, flexibility, decision making, achievement, authority presence, and resilience, right? They're able to have, they don't break down under pressure. They are able to take a lot of nonsense and the job. So now the beauty is, we gave you the four personalities. If you notice, feeler personalities, incidentally, nobody, right? It may be noted that the human behavior is highly dynamic and a result of environmental and heredity factors. That's exactly what we are covering. So in an ideal situation where there may be an alignment between heredity and upbringing, we may see the linkage between different dimensions as mentioned earlier. However, considering the dynamic life situations, it is very likely to see contradictions and disparities. That's why I was using the word likely, likely, likely. So in an unlikely event, they can contradict also. So what is important for us to note, why psychometrics plays such an important role in unmasking candidates is, when a candidate takes it, the good thing is about psychometry, it doesn't find fault with anybody. It is never a rejection tool. It only finds your strength and then finds out, okay, where this candidate is today, what are his four personality traits, what are his scores. Incidentally, on the feeler, intuitor, thinker, sensor, all the candidates will have a score. Nobody gets a zero. Only thing is something will be higher, something will be lesser. So then based on that, this candidate is suitable for what kind of, is it a people-oriented role? Then you'll probably pick a feeler content, because you need to bond, you need to connect with the customer, right? Customer focus has to be higher. But whereas if you need innovation, if you need creativity, if you need a lot of new initiatives, new ideas to come, correct? So then you need intuitive dimensions for that particular role. But if you need a lot of logical analysis, like quality control, like production, like finance, like audit, right? Then like a legal team, then you need a lot of thinker dimension, which is conforming rules, regulation, going into details, right? Becomes very, very essential. So, and if you're looking at a lot of salespeople, or if you're looking at entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, entrepreneurs within an organization, right? Entrepreneurs, we call them as intrapreneurs. So you will need an intrapreneurial candidate. So then you need a higher approach, action approach. You need somebody to get down to doing it, or pushing people to make things happen. Then it becomes very easy. So that's where the interplay of nature and nurture, as each one of us are conditioned differently by our heredity as well as by environment, the study and interpretation of the scores become challenging, definitely. That's why you need expertise. That's why we also certify people. And it becomes very interesting because that's why you're able to garner. So now let us look at behavior, attitude, and thinking through the internal view, using science of psychology to get the right person for the right role. Gain the immense value of battery of 3 to 5 psychometric assessments. You can use more than them, right? We're just giving you a sample. Psychometric assessment used together for in-depth analytics and objective inferences about the suitability of a candidate for a given role. So this is where I was mentioning about Carl Jung. Personality type analysis is based on the elaborate research of Carl Gustav Jung into the influences of heredity on the human mind, on the candidate's mind. On the other hand, you have William M. Marston. So FITS is the personality type Carl Gustav Jung went into, whereas William Marston went into personality style analysis based on extensive work on one's inner motivation. What is motivating him or her from the inside, from within one's mind, influenced by upbringing and environment. So that means your 2 scores on FITS and 4Cs can align, like I showed you earlier, can also contradict. And that is where then you know where the contradiction is coming, right? From which part of the environment. Now that you are equipped, now your behavioral event interviewing becomes very meaningful because you know exactly where to probe. Okay, hereditarily, this guy has the potential. So, but he is not displaying in the upbringing. There is a contradiction between the 2 scores. So, if they're not aligning, so that means then you probe. So, when you probe exactly, you can actually find out what is the behavioral event that has actually happened in this particular candidate. Not enough. We go deeper. We have 2 other scientists, right? The People Performance Competency 20, based on the phenomenal research contributions of Richard Boyatzis on the left, and of course you see David McClelland. Both of them are pioneers in the competency movement, and then no competency study can be done without them. So this tool basically measures, right, about 5 meta competencies, like managing change, under which you get initiative, risk taking, flexibility, innovation, etc. Then you have the planning and organizing, where your analytical thinking comes, decision making comes, quality focus comes, as well as the other one in terms of planning comes. Then you have the interpersonal, the meta competency, interpersonal skills. So under which you have oral communication, you have sensitivity, you have teamwork, you have relationships. And then finally, you have the result orientation, under which you talk about achievement ability. Candidate, can you achieve? Can you deliver results to you? Right? What is this customer focus? What is this business awareness? How much does he know about the business, or about the economy, or about the industry? And then finally, what is his learning orientation? How quick is he, learning open or learning closed already? Right? And finally, you have the leadership competency, the big 5. Under that, we study authority and presence of the candidate. Can he really make an impact? Can he stand up under ambiguous situations? Whether he has the ability to motivate people, can he develop and nurture his second line, third line? And then finally, the resilience, ability to withstand pressure, to work under pressure. A lot of managers buckle under pressure, and that's where it becomes very important. And then finally, we have 2 other great scientists, very well-known names. Dr. Eric Berne, of the fame of transactional analysis. He spoke about communication pattern, and then we analyze how is this candidate likely to communicate? What is the pattern? And of course, Douglas McGregor, of another great psychologist, right? Who spoke, presented us, and all of you would have studied in your management theories about theory X and theory Y. So, is this person whom you are hiring, how much of a theory X component is there in him, or how much of a theory Y component is there, and how does it come out through his or her communication? Very important to know the inner mind, right? That is why you measure competencies, you also measure the communication pattern. And not to be undone is well-known scientist B.F. Skinner, right? And he contributed tremendously in terms of behavior pattern analysis, right? So now you talk about conducting a behavioral event interview. How can we conduct that without the Skinner's contribution, right? Because behavioral pattern analysis, the BPA, based on the research of B.F. Skinner, Burroughs Frederick Skinner, illustrates environmental event influences on an individual by identifying and comparing behavioral patterns in variable situations. Like I gave you that example, the way I talk to my boss, or where I talk to my team member, or the way when I go back home, where do I deal with my wife, or why do I deal with my child? So, or where I deal with neighbors, all different situations, right? But even after some time, even that falls into habits and mindsets and attitudes where the behaviors become static in those given situations. This brings to awareness the manner of likely behavior of person across different situations. That is where now you are actually gone deeper into that mind, right? And that is where all these tools help. So to unmasking candidates' inner mind to find the right kind and avoid hiring in a blind. So now, my dear friends, we're almost at the end of this webinar. So if you are looking for professional help, yes, we are known for psychometric, assessment. We use it a lot from TAW, right? The assessment world. We offer professional certifications in these tools. We do a lot of behavioral interventions in organizations as well as with individuals. We work and we train them, coach them, right? Across a lot of our consultants and coaches do that across in different cities. We can always link you up. And we are change catalysts, performance enhancers, and authors and researchers. You're welcome to join hands in unmasking candidates' mind for BAT, behavior, attitude, and thinking. People do come to us for help in careers or with respect to relationships, enhancement, or in terms of self-awareness and personality, or in terms of communication and leadership development, as well as in terms of personal branding. So feel free to get to us anytime you want us, and we would love to be of help to you. Yeah.